Good evening and welcome to the latest Family Caregiver Education webinar hosted by the National Private Duty Association. As you all know, home care choices for your loved ones can be very difficult, and the NPDA is here to help and provide information for consumers. Members of the NPDA are private duty home care agencies, which are companies that provide in-home care services. Okay, I am Joni Williams, and I'll be your moderator this evening. Before we start, I just want to mention a couple housekeeping items. If you have any kind of technical problems during the event, you can call 1-800-843-9166 with any issues. As you heard, the event is being recorded, and we will be sending it out to registrants for your reference later and to pass on, and posting it on the NPDA website. The event tonight is called Creating a Care Plan, and it's basically focused on creating a care plan for your parents. As you may know or not know, November is National Family Caregiver Month, so we thought this was a very appropriate topic for the month. The focus of the event will be on knowing when and how to develop a plan with care professionals that will enhance and maximize the quality of life for your loved one as they age in place. The event tonight will run about a half-hour presentation. We'll have time at the end for questions and answers. During the event, if you have some kind of questions, you can chat. There's a chat function. Just chat those in, and we'll keep a note on those and try and address as many as we can at the end of the event. And we'll do that at the end, like I said, at the end. And just to move on, our expert presenter this evening we're very excited to have with us Bert Koppel. He is the general manager of the Homestead Senior Care franchise that's located in Birmingham, Michigan. This franchise that he works with has been named as the top 40 workplace by the Detroit Free Press in 2010 and 2011. In addition, his office was ranked as the #1 Homestead Senior Care franchise in North America for caregiver and client satisfaction in March of 2011. Bert has earned a master's degree in theology and a Master of Divinity in leadership. He is a decorated war veteran serving in Iraq with the U.S. Army. In addition, he is a licensed minister and chaplain, a published author, and an adjunct faculty member at Central Bible College. He has been very, very instrumental and busy in this industry and has a lot of insight. So we welcome Bert Koppel. Take it away, Bert.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And welcome, everybody. We have quite a bit to cover tonight in 30 minutes. And tonight's topics are really going to focus on these here. What is a care plan or a plan of care? How do you set up a successful plan? What are the plan of care components? How do you manage a plan? And basically, we look at that from the perspective of what is someone's perception versus reality in managing that plan? What are some of the warning signs of a failed plan? What can we do to empower our caregivers to make sure a plan is working properly? And then we'll look at just a couple of resources at the end to help us get that going. But I want to start off tonight by telling you a story. Once upon a time, and this is a real-life story, there was a man named Joe. And Joe was being discharged from the hospital, but his adult children didn't find out about it until 3 hours before he was just discharged. So the kids very quickly had to pick a home care company off of a list. They then met with 2 agencies in the lobby of the hospital, and then Joe was discharged and taken home. The agency that they had picked came back that night with a caregiver. They had just a couple of basic notes, and a member of the office staff came out and asked them, what do we want to do? What steps need to be taken to take care of Joe? Now, of course, they had information from the discharge planner. They had some notes from the doctor, but the kids basically said, just keep Dad safe, and that was pretty much what the plan of care was. There were no goals set up. There was nothing to reach for down the road in terms of what they wanted to accomplish. It was simply a quick thought, a few notes on a sheet of paper, and they move forward. The bottom line is this: a plan of care is something that can be set up now. It can be set up before your loved one goes into a hospital. It can be set up really to help put those pieces of the puzzle together. In the event that an emergency arises, you can actually have a plan of care in place that can then be tweaked for whatever situations may arise. So what exactly is a plan of care? I've heard so many different definitions of what this could be, and the first one I always hear is that it's just basic instructions. And I love some of the basic instructions that we get for some of our clients when we sign them up, especially when it comes to 2 areas, cooking and bathing. Basic instructions for cooking might sound like this: please make Dad lasagna for dinner. Very simple. Or for bathing, be sure Mom gets a sponge bath after breakfast. That's fantastic. Now, we also have some other clients who really give us some detailed instructions, and I mean detailed. For example, the same cooking instructions can look like this. We want you to make lasagna. Please use turkey meat and the fat-free cheese. Cut it up and then place it in 8 equal pieces in 8 different Tupperware containers. Be sure you use the Tupperware containers with the blue lids. Oh, and please, use the ricotta cheese in the white container, not the red one. My sister bought the red one. I'm not sure it's any good anymore. Or how about bathing? And this is no joke. These are literal instructions that we have received. The orange washcloth is for the face. The brown washcloth is for the body. And the red washcloth is for the feet. Mom has diabetes. Make sure that you use Dove soap for the face only, and then use the bottle soap for everything else. Now imagine if you had those detailed instructions for every single part of a plan of care. It would be overwhelming to a caregiver. And then how about this one, the roadmap? This is my favorite type of plan of care because it gives general instructions. We need you to move from point A to point B, but it doesn't always give you every instruction as to how to get there. Here's an example of what a roadmap instruction sounds like. For cooking, make a hearty Italian dish for Dad that will also provide some leftovers for a few days. Or for bathing, please make sure Mom gets a sponge bath today before her doctor's appointment. The stuff you need for the bath is in the hall closet. And then one that's also dangerous I call compass instructions. That's when the instructions sound like this. Just make sure Dad eats something. And then for bathing, good luck giving Mom a bath today. Thanks for trying. Instructions are important, but to really understand how instructions fit into a plan of care, we need to understand what a plan of care is. And here's a great definition for you. A plan of care is a living document designed to provide instructions and guidance to accomplish desired outcomes. Let me say that one more time. It's a living document designed to provide instructions and guidance to accomplish desired outcomes. We all want to give instructions to our caregivers. We all want to give instructions to family members, but instructions by themselves don't guide us to accomplish desired outcomes or goals that we might have for our loved ones. And my least favorite plan of care are the instructions that were written back in August of 2008 and haven't changed at all because the family still thinks that we're supposed to provide the same care for their loved one that we were providing 3 years ago. And that's not how it works. A plan of care needs to be a living document that can be used to successfully plan for what we want our loved ones to accomplish and go through during their time with home care. So how do we set up a successful plan? There's a couple of questions that we need to ask and some points that need to be addressed. And those are, where has Mom been? Where is Mom now? And where is Mom going? So where has Mom been? With this question, we're really looking at the history. We're looking at the medical history. We're looking at the social history. We're looking at maybe some conditions or issues that Mom once had in her past, some fears that she may have had in her life that may affect her today. We need to know where Mom has been so that we know where Mom may be going. And not only that, one of my favorite lines is that past performance dictates future results. If Mom was someone who has become lazy and she continues to sit on the couch and watch TV, and that's what she did before she went into the hospital, there's a very good chance that Mom will be someone who's lazier, who chooses to sit on the couch and wants to watch TV now that she's coming home in pain. So we need to know what the history is before we can begin to address what they're currently going through. And then where is Mom now? We need to talk about the diagnosis that Mom receives while in the hospital or a nursing home or a rehab center. Is there cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's disease, or dementia, COPD? Is Mom a fall risk? Is Mom coming home on hospice or palliative care? All of those different things need to be discussed and understood up front to make sure the plan of care and the activities fit appropriately for what Mom is going through. And then we have to look at the activities for daily living. And this is important, especially if your loved one has long-term care insurance. Because in order for most long-term care insurance policies to kick in, they must meet a threshold of activities for daily living in order for payment to be processed. These include mobility or transferring or ambulation, dressing, bathing, toileting, continence care, and also eating or feeding. So those things need to be spelled out very carefully in the plan of care. Then what about routines? We need to know the waking and sleeping schedule for mom. Does she nap during the day? Do we not want mom to nap 6 times a day and just one nap in the middle of the afternoon after lunch? What do we do about mom's meals? Does she sleep in late so she's having a brunch instead of a breakfast and a lunch? How about bathing? Are we bathing a certain number of days a week? And if we are we setting those days? Dressing. If mom has issues with neuropathy or perhaps she has a form of dementia or even Parkinson's, buttons may not work appropriately. So the caregiver needs to know what type of clothing they can set out that will really make mom feel like she's accomplishing something on her own that day when getting dressed. How does mom do with the stairs? How does mom do with driving? And what about her medications? Are we having to do medication reminders? Who's coming over to set up the meds? Are there any regulations in your state that would prevent a non-medical caregiver from setting them up? Does someone that can do skilled care need to come in to do that? And how about their social network? We often forget about this when doing a plan of care for seniors because we're so worried about the basic intrinsic needs that they have when they come out of a nursing home or a rehab stay or a hospital that we forget that mom is a person and she needs to be around other people and she needs to interact with friends and family. So who are their friends? Who are the family members? What people can they call on the phone? Are there outings that they could go on? Do they enjoy using the computer? Is there a computer in the home and maybe a caregiver just needs to help them? What about mom's love affair with Pat Sajak and Alex Trebek every night at 7 p.m. Eastern? Do those shows matter to mom? Does she need to watch those programs because it's part of her social network? And then here's the most important thing. Where is mom going? What's the purpose of having home care to begin with? What do we want mom to accomplish? Where do we want to see mom in a week, a month, a year? Are we doing this for a reacclimation period to make sure that mom is safe when she comes home from the nursing home or a rehab stay so that when she gets out of bed those first couple of nights, she doesn't forget where she's at and she has a safety standby assist to make sure that she's going to be okay? Is mom coming home in hospice? Are we there to really help her manage her pain? So that we know that we can establish a good contact with their hospice nurse or advocate to be sure that that pain is being controlled. Is there physical therapy or occupational therapy that's happening? And can the caregivers encourage mom and be a coach for her on those days when the physical therapist isn't there to continue to do those exercises to gain strength? Are we hoping that maybe she'll graduate from a piece of durable medical equipment to graduate from a wheelchair to a walker to a cane? What about strength? Are we helping mom get out to walk a little bit to make sure that her muscles are not just dwindling away while she sits? And then finally, this is important. Are we setting goals that are achievable? Are we setting goals that are achievable? And this often comes up into play when we really fail to do one thing, and that's when we fail to plan. A failure to plan is a failure to lead. It's not acceptable to hire a home care company and to have a group of caregivers working in your home if there's no plan, if there's no goal. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, you don't run a company and hire employees to come work for you and not give them goals to achieve while they're working there. Why would we do the same thing for caregivers or a home care company in your home? What are we trying to accomplish with the care that's being provided for your mom or your dad? If there's no goals, there's no results. Here's another great story. A client that we just started at our agency literally just a couple days ago. Dad was coming home from the hospital because he had a heart attack, and mom was at home. And before dad went into the hospital, he was the primary caregiver for his wife. He was doing her bathing and her meal prep and doing all of those things that he loved so much to do for his wife. It was his expression for his wife who had dementia. But when he went into the hospital, things changed a bit. And both of the adult children came home from out of state, and they wanted to put care in place for Dad so that when Dad did come home, he wouldn't have all the stressors on his life. So the kids met with us, and they set up a nice plan of care for what they wanted us to do for Mom, because after all, Mom was the client. And then the kids left. And we showed up for the first shift, and Dad was fit to be tied. Dad was upset because he was the primary caregiver, and now he had been cut out totally of her care. He didn't have any say in what the kids had set up for Dad to do. Dad didn't want his wife bathed in the bathroom by the kitchen. He wanted her to be bathed in the bathroom in their bedroom, even though there were safety risks involved. This happens a lot where the plans of the children are different from those of the spouse or the client. Are the plans in sync with each other? Is it something that the kids aren't going to be fighting with mom or dad with the entire time plan is in place? We talked about achievable goals. Is it something that can be done? There's nothing there's nothing more saddening, really, than when a loved one, a mom or a dad, is on hospice care, and the child that lives out of state comes back home, and when he walks into the home, he wants mom to do everything that she used to do because that's how he remembers her, and he wants to get her up out of bed and get her in the wheelchair and feed her the food that she fed him. But mom is too far gone now, and so the expectations, the goals of that son are not achievable because the plan of care doesn't match those expectations. And this is why it's so important to make sure that when we are setting plans, that we get the plans from everybody who's involved. Just entertain this chaplain for a second with a proverb. Proverbs 15:22 says, "Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed." When a family comes together to put together a plan of care, and then when that family comes together and they then implement that and they work with the agency, everybody's on board. There's total involvement at that point. Everybody knows what the game plan is. And then you don't have resentment amongst siblings because everybody is not on the same page. If you want to start a fight with some adult children of parents, let one person set up the plan of care. Don't let the other kids have any input whatsoever, and then watch the pressures and the fireworks that happen. And this, of course, has family dynamics with it. One thing that we always recommend, when there's a big, active family, and folks, my family's Italian, and I got to tell you, my family, everybody has an opinion about everything. And so when we all get together to make plans for our grandmother right now, who is now a widow and she's living by herself, everybody has a different opinion of what should happen, but at the end of the day, we all have to come into agreement of what is an acceptable plan of care. And then what we do is we pick a lead contact, one person in the family who will communicate with the caregivers and the agency to be sure the plan of care is being accomplished properly. Having 3 or 4 chiefs giving orders to the caregivers and the agency does not work. And it's one thing that we address up front with our families to make sure they know that we need just one point of contact and all the information has to go through them. And then there's one point of the planning that we tend to forget. A lot of the planning needs to come from the caregivers. The caregivers are the ones who are actually doing all the work. They're the ones who are implementing the plan. They're the ones who are tweaking it. They're the ones who are in the trenches, so to speak, providing that care. And if we're not careful to include the caregivers in the planning stages and the tweaking stages that happen down the road, we may find that our planning could be in vain. And here's why. Details are important. I am probably the world's worst assembler of wooden products, especially when you get them from a store called IKEA. And I'm not bashing IKEA at all. I own several pieces of their furniture that other people have put together for me. But if you've ever looked at the IKEA instructions, they're very confusing. I can never match up the right size screw with how it looks on the paper. I'm always literally laying the screws on the paper to see if I have the right one. And then I love this diagram up here. I mean, this just looks crazy to me. It's supposed to look like this and not like this. It doesn't make any sense to me. But here's the thing. The details are important. And whenever I put together a piece of IKEA furniture and I struggle, especially when it says assembly time should be 45 minutes, and there I am 6 hours later still trying to put together the same piece of furniture, it makes me feel like I'm less of a man doing that. We need to be careful with the details with our caregivers, and here's why. We don't want to kill our caregivers with the details. We have to remember that caregivers, they have different personalities, they have different education levels, they have different levels of experience. And so all of those different things come into play where we need to remember that we don't always want to tell the caregivers what they can't do. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, but instead tell the caregivers what they can do and then give them freedom to do it. Remember, we went back at the beginning and talked about different types of instructions, and I said there's basic, there's detailed, there's a roadmap and a compass. I like the roadmap plan of care because it gives caregivers, intelligent, caring caregivers, the opportunity to get on the road and travel a path, and as long as they get to the end destination, they get there. They may want to take a shortcut, they may take a different route than you, but as long as they end up in the same place, that's what matters. I had a caregiver one time, this is 2 years ago, a caregiver called me and she was just in tears, totally in tears. The instructions that were left by the daughter to give mom a bath were unbelievable. The instructions were like this: the room temperature needs to be 78 degrees. There's a thermometer in the bathroom. You can use the hot water from the shower to warm the room. Make sure you open the shower curtain to the left and not to the right. Mom doesn't like it that way. You want to set up the soap in the washcloth so that there's no skin to bar contact. You want to make sure you use setting number 3 on the shower head to start, and then when she's ready, move it to setting number 5. Now, there's a red towel that you want to use on the floor. That one's always used on the floor. And then we have white towels to dry them off with. So this caregiver called after 15 minutes of trying to get the water temperature correct on the upstairs bathroom. She couldn't get it. She said, Bert, it just keeps going up to 85, and then I turn it off, and the steam rolls out, and it drops down too quick. And she said, I just don't understand why I just can't give her a shower. And the best part of the whole thing is when she was done with this, she went downstairs to check on the client who had already gotten into the shower on the first floor and was almost done. And when the caregiver asked her what she was doing, she said, oh, honey, my daughter doesn't know what she's talking about. I can take a shower down here. We need to make sure that when we give instructions to our caregivers that we're not going so overboard that they're not able to do what they do best, and that's to operate within a plan of care. So what are some of the plan of care components? Now, this is just a guide. The slides I'm about to show you are not gospel. These are not things that you absolutely have to have, but this is what the stuff from our agency looks like. We have a cover page, and we really focus on some of the key things. For example, are there pets in the home? Does anyone else live in the home? Are there smokers in the home? And then, of course, this part down here is when we get a brief medical history of what exactly it is we're looking at with our clients. The next page talks about all the different things we're concerned about: their vision, their hearing, their speech, their eating, any type of special diet, foods that the client does not like, not necessarily things they do like, but the things we should just not waste our time with. What's the grooming situation like? Their bathing, their dressing, their ambulation situation. Are they using any DME, canes or walkers or wheelchairs? Let's talk about depression. What about the medications? Is the client on Coumadin, something we absolutely need to know in case of there being a fall or a scrape or a cut? And then it continues on with even more detail. We talk about relationships. Are they widowed? If not, how long have they been married so we can celebrate their wedding anniversary together? What is their daily routine like in terms of what time do they wake up and go to sleep and nap? Transportation. Is the caregiver driving the client in their car, or does the caregiver have permission to drive the client in the caregiver's vehicle? What type of cleaning and home management are we doing around the home? And then this stuff right here, the good stuff. How does the client spend the day? What hobbies does the client have? Are there TVs or movies that they enjoy? Do they enjoy books? If they're legally blind, do they do books on tape? What was their occupation? And then did they attend worship services? These are all some of the things that we like to get to know. And then finally, the final page is this. This page is specifically for clients with Alzheimer's or dementia. And it needs to be filled out completely because we need to know about their attention span and language and their emotional control. And then down here, what are some of the behaviors they have? Do they wander? Do they have delusions? Are they pacing? And then the most important space, what techniques best modify those behaviors? What things do you as a family caregiver do at this time to overcome those challenges that mom or dad has? And then finally, the last page talks about those activities for daily living. transferring, mobility, bathing, continence care, dressing, eating. Those things have to be addressed. And then those instrumental activities for daily living, shopping, meal preparation, home management, laundry, transportation, money management, taking medications. Those are all things that we need to know to really get a good roadmap plan of care set up. So once the plan of care is set up, how do you manage it? Well, a good agency is going to do supervisory visits, usually by a registered nurse or a paraprofessional who's been trained by that nurse to do those. They'll come out and they'll evaluate the plan of care and look at the log notes of what the caregiver is filling out to make sure they're actually doing those things that the plan of care requires. Then, of course, there's family caregiver monitoring. The kids of the family can check on it. And also there's caregiver team self-regulation, where the caregivers can call and they can tell us what's going on. But also there's a couple other things that you might want to think about as well. How about caregiver team meetings? This is when the agency will get all the caregivers together that take care of your mom or dad, usually on their own dime. And they have a conversation about the plan of care and give the caregivers a chance to talk to each other to see what things are working better for you. What are some things that we can do differently? You can do conference calls if you don't have the option for a team meeting. There's a great website called freeconferencecall.com. You can go to that website, sign up for an account, and you can literally do a conference call with all of your caregivers about a certain client at any time. And then here's the most important thing. Just change the living document. Change the plan of care. What would that look like? Well, at our company, we have a plan of care instruction sheet that is simply just handwritten documentation that says, here's what we're going to start doing differently. Here are the changes that we're going to make. And then this section over here is where the caregivers are required to literally sign their name, put their initials and date it that shows that they have read the revisions to the plan of care, so you know the caregiver is on the same page as you. We're almost done. How about the warning signs of a failed plan of care? There's a couple things to look at. The caregiver's not completing the tasks. Dad's not meeting the goals that we've set. The ADLs, the activities for daily living, are not being performed. And then some of the more obvious ones. The caregiver's not happy, and Dad's not happy. Those are important things to look at, and those are signs to tell you that the plan of care needs to be evaluated to make sure it's still relevant for the care that's actually needed. And then here's another one that's important. Dad is surviving, he's not thriving. Dad is surviving, he's not thriving. And the only way that Dad is going to survive with a good plan of care is if we empower our caregivers to do their jobs. Again, we want to focus on those things that the caregivers can do versus the things the caregivers cannot do. It's really important that when you first start with an agency or a caregiver that you micromanage, that you micromanage up front. You do the micromanaging first, and then you have to give way to macromanaging so the caregiver has some freedom to actually do the care. We have to remember that perception is not always reality. Your perception might be that mom is not, well, it could be a reality too. Mom is not getting a shower. That's your reality, but the caregiver's reality could be that mom's refusing to get into the shower. She refuses to do it that way, and I've offered to do a sponge bath, and you keep on telling me that you don't want your mom to have a sponge bath. You want her to get into the shower, but the reality is that the caregiver might need to try something different to make it work. We need to solicit caregiver feedback to make sure that the plan of care is working effectively and to see if they have any recommendations on how we can change it. We have to give the caregivers permission to serve. Caregiving, as all of you know, it's a vocation, it's not a job. We tell our caregivers in orientation all the time, if you're looking to take this job because you need the money, go down the road to a fast food restaurant and take a job as a swing manager and you'll make more money. Caregiving is a thankless job. It's a vocation. So we need to give the caregivers the opportunity to serve in their role. And then we have to recognize them when they're doing a great job. So what are a couple resources that I can leave you with today, things that you can take a look at? One of them is a great website called caregiverstress.com. It talks about some of the stresses that you as family caregivers may be going through, and it gives some good points and some good educational resources as well. There's a great website called getmommoving.com. It talks about activities for the mind, the soul, and the body. Actually, there's a great set of activity cards that goes with that website, and I would be happy to send that to anybody out there who would be willing to request a copy. If you want to receive a set of those activity cards for free, send me a personal email to bert.koppel@homeinstead.com, and I will send those to you for free. It's a great resource to help encourage your caregivers to start doing activities that care for the mind, the body, and the soul of your loved one while they're taking care of them. It's a real empowerment tool for them. And then if you're from Michigan, there's a great website called MichiganCaregiver.com. It's a nonprofit that's designed to strictly provide educational resources, support education and training to working caregivers. So those are the resources that I have. I know we've covered quite a bit today in the short amount of time that we have had, and I want to open up at this time for any questions that might be out there.
Bert, just wanted to, I guess, reemphasize again to all the participants, if you do have a question, just chat it in. We've gotten a couple come in already, but definitely chat something in if you've got a question going on. The first question that we have is, what experts should you, obviously you're talking to an agency, but what experts might be involved in the development of a care plan, like medical experts or any other kind of experts outside of the agency?
Sure. It's a great question. Who can you expect to come out? If you're dealing with a company that is Medicaid or Medicaid certified, dealing with physical therapy, occupational therapy, skilled home care, you're going to have a nurse that comes out first to do a home evaluation. If you're dealing with a non-medical company, and it all strictly depends on what the regulations are for those states, it could be a registered nurse, it could be a paraprofessional, it could be an office staff member that can come out to do an initial assessment that is then reviewed by a nurse, and then usually you have a nurse that comes out to visit within the first couple of days to see how the plan is working out. But it can be any of those options, really. Just know that whoever the office is sending out, they probably would not be sending them if they weren't qualified to at least get a plan of care put in place.
Okay. We have another one that was just chatted in. What are some good strategies to help an elder who is afraid to be active because of pain and fear of pain?
That's a great question. We have a lot of clients that have some severe arthritis, pain, that sort of thing. The first thing to do is to address the pain. If there is a real pain, can the pain be addressed? Is there some technique or way that it can be medicated? Is there a prescription that's optional for them? Also, can you find different ways? To conduct activities that might have a reduced impact? For example, if walking stairs is difficult or walking in general is difficult, perhaps a treadmill would be a better option, or doing a different version. It could be an exercise bike. If they once enjoyed doing gardening and they're afraid to go outside because they're afraid to fall in the garden or fall in the ground, bring the garden to the senior. Do potting activities in the living room or in the kitchen, wherever the case is. Just try to find modified versions of those activities to get them engaged, which reduce the risk and have a lower impact.
Okay, just a kind of quick question, but can you please define the term paraprofessional? Yeah,
paraprofessional, and again, it depends on what different states' regulations are. Per our accreditation through ACHC, which is the Accrediting Commission for Healthcare, it's someone who is trained by a nurse to do those things. For example, I'm a master level chaplain. I am able to go out to do an initial plan of care because we are a non-skilled agency. So I'm able to go out to do those as well. Other members in the office who are degreed that are able to go out to prepare those plans of care or have been trained to do so. But again, it strictly depends on what the accreditation, if there is one available, requires, or what their state requires as well. So really the definition is going to depend on really what the regulations are from state to state.
Okay. This might involve some medical aspects, but someone is asking, I think you touched on this, mentioning if someone has depression, how do you address depression of their current situation and future fears beyond like medication and therapy? Are there things the caregiver can do, I guess, to kind of help with that, or the plan can kind of cover that isn't necessarily medical related?
Well, we have to get to the root of what the depression is. We use a lot of geriatric case managers and also folks who specialize in geriatric healthcare when it comes to issues of depression. If there's a clinical depression there, it needs to be treated medically. If they're just depressed or not feeling well because, for example, their spouse had passed away, they may need time to just reminisce about times with their spouse. One of the most therapeutic things that we do with clients is to go through photos. We have a client right now that goes through photographs to really try to talk about fond memories and talk about good times, which tends to cheer them up and to bring them into a better mood, as opposed to simply just trying to mope through it and do the basic things. We know it's important that we get the kitchen floor mopped today, but Mr. Jones or whatever their name is really needs to have some attention with them today. So we're going to pull out the photo book and do some discussion, that type of thing.
Okay. We have another question. I have a lot of questions coming in all of a sudden. That's good. Basically, I think this kind of deals with once you've developed a care of plan, someone's asking what, sometimes you probably run into this where dad or mom doesn't want help, outside help. So how do you make sure they get like a caregiver that's effective and I guess can work with someone like that in the home to make sure
there's a couple of things, and again, these are all really good questions, and I guess the challenge is there could be multiple answers for each one, and I can just give a couple of examples. One great example is this. We had a client literally in the same city just down the street from us who absolutely refused to have a caregiver come into the home. So we devised a plan with the kids to introduce a caregiver and just introduce them as a neighbor. This is so-and-so from down the street who's going to be coming in just to check on you while we're out of town, and they were open to that. So we simply sent the bill and everything else to the kids out of state. We kept the journal here at the office, so when the caregiver was done, they would fill it out, and that went on for a very long time until eventually they just developed such a great relationship that the client didn't care anymore, that it was a paid caregiver. That's one option. Number two, we have to remember as well that parents, mom and dad do not want to be parented by their kids. One thing we always find out, where I love it when the adult children call and say, my mom is going to absolutely resist someone coming in. And then we say, well, let's give us a chance to come out and just meet. And we go out and meet with them and we talk with them. And oftentimes they're more receptive to us than the kids think they are, just because the parents want it to be their idea and not their kid's idea. So if we have that opportunity to get in there, that can be helpful. You can also request certain things as well. Oftentimes we get calls from veterans. Being a veteran myself, I'm able to go and talk about different things that vets talk about, and it kind of builds a rapport with them, and there's some empathy developed, so it makes it easier for me to encourage a veteran to sign up. Or if there's a client that absolutely just is opposed to having a male into the home because her husband has passed away, we make sure a female can go out. Different agencies should be able to be sensitive to those types of things to have that encouragement come out. Other things, too, just comes down to it could start off with something as easy as some incidental transportation. For example, we have a client right now where the child lives out in California, and she absolutely knows that mom needs some help, but mom is refusing. But mom needed to go to a doctor's appointment and then have some follow-up, and there was no one to do it. So the daughter signed her up for care with our agency. We were able to go out to meet her, take her to her appointment, and after that one time, she was then more open to it. So you can kind of gradually build into it as well. It doesn't have to be all or nothing from the get-go. Sometimes it can start off with just a short visit or common sense things like, Mom, you can't go up and down those stairs to do laundry anymore. We're just going to have someone come by once a week to do your laundry. And oftentimes those relationships begin to blossom and grow. And pretty soon Mom has somebody there 5-6 days a week, and she's okay with that, and that makes the kids feel fantastic.
Okay, great. I think we have time for maybe one more question. We have a question come in. I'm not sure how much you deal with this, Bert, but you hear a lot about emergency devices to kind of help monitor situations at home. Is there any kind of resources people can go to check at that, or is that kind of might be a component that's involved in the care plan?
Yeah, that's something that we talk about at the care plan. For example, our agency, we have a really good partnership with a company where we can actually help them get signed up with it, and we can help waive their activation fee just through our national partnership. That's something that if you talk to any home care agency about, they should be able to make a good referral for you to a company that's going to be right for you in that region. And oftentimes, if you can do it through an agency, they can usually get you a good deal, better than you could get by yourself, just as someone off the street. They could definitely get that set up for you.
Okay. I think that covers all the questions we have at this point. And Bert, we'd just like to thank you for your it was a very thorough presentation. It was great. And for everybody on the call, on the left side you can see the privatedutyhomecare.org is the website for the MPDA. So if you want to learn more about the MPDA and their members and their private duty home care what they do for people and people like you that have a loved one who needs care at home. Just go ahead and check that out. And as we had mentioned earlier, we'll be sending out this recording to all people that registered, and you can pass it on or use it for a future reference. And it will also be posted on the NPDA website. We appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.